You're listening to Meet the Thriller Author, the podcast that features interviews with thriller, mystery, and suspense authors. I am your host, Alan Peterson, and today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/MTTA. And that's an M as in murderer. Over 180,000 titles, including great thrillers to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. So stay tuned for the next episode of Meet the Thriller Author. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the podcast. Today's guest is Dawn Lee McKenna, and Dawn is the author of the bestselling Forgotten Coast, Florida suspense series novels. And so really happy to have her here on the podcast. Thank you for being on the show, Dawn.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And so for listeners who might not have heard about you or your novels, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a Florida native, been living in Tennessee for the last 20 years. I have a suspense series, as you said, the Forgotten Coast, Florida suspense series, which is set in Apalachicola, Florida, which is in the Panhandle. And it's a character-driven, very much character-driven suspense series. And I'm getting ready to release the 7th book sometime this month. And it's been very exciting. It's been very exciting. Unexpectedly happy with the way that it's worked out.
And you know, I'm glad that you said the name of the town in Florida, because I was gonna say it in my intro, and I'm like, Apalachicola. I couldn't do it.
Appalach for short.
Appalach. Okay, that's better.
Much easier to roll off the tongue.
Yeah. And your books are just they're doing so well, and it looks like you've really hit a nerve there with readers. Can you describe a little bit about your books and the feel? Because they're set in Florida, but this is it's not like Miami, Florida. It's like very different from southern Florida. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's not Miami at all. Appalach is an amazing place. It's very much what Florida used to be. They have very intentionally kept it true to its history. It gives me the impression of a little New England fishing town. Got picked up and set down in Florida. And it was settled by Northerners. And so the architecture is very much New England coastal kind of thing. But it's a very small town. I think they have around 2,300 permanent residents right now. And they do a pretty good tourist business, but it's very much still a fishing town, oystering and shrimping, and it's a really amazing place. And I always feel really grateful when people tell me that I convey the atmosphere well, because to me it's hard to convey. It's just a very, very special place. One of the most helpful people in writing this series has been a gentleman named John Solomon, who I met by contacting the Chamber of Commerce. I had a question when I was writing Low Tide, and I thought maybe the Chamber of Commerce could answer it, and they put me on to their director, John Solomon. And I got really lucky, A, that he was excited about talking to me about the books, and B, that he was retired from 20 years with with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. So I got 2 technical advisors in one, and he's been incredibly helpful. And he mentioned to me, I thought of this when you said Appalach isn't Miami. He said to me recently, he said, you know, every time one of your books comes out, you multiply the actual crime rate in Franklin County by about 4,000%. I said, yeah. I mean, they have no crime. So, but that's part of the humor of the series, really. And people that know Appalach, they know if somebody shoplifts something from the Piggly Wiggly, it's kind of a big deal. So the fact that I have, chopped up bodies and drug dealers and all these other things going on, they think it's pretty funny. I was worried at first they'd get angry with me, but they didn't.
Yeah. You can't have a thriller, mystery, suspense type novels without some bodies.
Yeah, the occasional foot.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun because I know that it's ridiculous, and the series is imbued with a sense of the ridiculous. So right there, I didn't miss the tropes there, but that's the way I like it. There's a lot of humor in the series. There are some serious issues that seem to pop up in each book, which is kind of unintentional, and I take those issues seriously, but the books themselves don't take themselves very seriously, and the characters are a lot funnier than I am. So I don't know, it seemed to work out well. A blend of the serious and the tongue-in-cheek.
Obviously, the location and the region is is probably a huge character for your books as well. It's just
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Appalach is definitely one of the central characters.
And how long have you been writing for?
I've been writing seriously since I was 12. I've been writing professionally since 2010, but I started as a ghostwriter, writing nonfiction, and my intention was to just be at home so that I could work on my fiction, and the ghostwriting kind of took over my life, and I didn't have nearly as much time for writing my fiction as I thought I would. The series was actually a very desperate attempt to replace my freelance income so that I could focus on the fiction. And that worked out far better than I actually dared to hope it would. But prior to the series, I had one book released. It was a standalone novel that got reviewed very well, and I got lots of wonderful feedback on it. But as you know, a standalone novel, especially as a first novel, is really has to defy some serious odds to be successful. So I turned my focus to writing a series, or trying to write a series, and kind of hoped that would generate at least a small income so that I could, if not quit ghostwriting, at least cut way back on it. And it worked out enormously well, in spite of my messing everything up. So
we were talking a little about that before. You really hit something with your readers, because your books are doing so well, even though you might not be hitting what the so-called experts say you need to be hitting.
Yeah.
Why do you think that your books have found such a great audience?
It's the characters, for sure. It's the characters. They are so involved in the characters. It's a beautiful thing to me to watch, because I know that as a writer, your characters are real people, and and you grow to care about them. And I love these characters, and the readers they just respond so much to these characters, and so many emails and Amazon reviews talk about, these characters have become my friends, they've become my family. I really want to find out what happens next with them. And so it's absolutely the characters. I would like to think the writing has something to do with it. But I think it was just a perfect storm of characters. And I don't think that I actually created those characters. They just kind of walked up and introduced themselves, and I started writing about them. And but I think it's definitely the main thing that's made the series so successful, and the reason that I found this, like you said, this group of this niche of readers that love these books. And man, am I grateful for that. But yeah, they love these characters.
And were you a fan of thrillers and suspense mysteries?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. James Lee Burke is my hero.
Oh, yeah.
And when I first discovered K-boards back in 2014, and decided that I was going to try to become an indie publisher. I was trying to decide if I should write See You, which ended up being my first novel, and was something I had been working on for a number of years. I was trying to decide whether I should write that or try to publish a series first. And I said, I just don't have a series in me. I'm just not a series writer. And so I shelved that idea and published See You. And over the course of about 6 months or so, so many of my friends were writing series, and I was like, if I could write a series, I would, and if I did, it would be suspense. And I remember thinking, if I could capture sense of place 10% as well as James Lee Burke, I would consider myself successful at it. And when I started this series, I definitely had that in the back of my head the whole time I was writing, because James Lee Burke could put you in New Iberia, Louisiana with 6 words. And it's just, he's like a ballet dancer with that keyboard, he's just amazing. And Robert Parker, big fan of Robert Parker, big admirer of his dialogue. And, so I had writers like that in the back of my head when I was working on the series. And I was like, just, if you can be 1/10 as good, just 1/10 as good, they'll be decent books. And I'm still working on that.
Well, that's a great approach to take too. To not get overwhelmed or frustrated. Just try it, like baby stepping it.
Yeah, and I just like I said, when I was writing Low Tide, I got like 3 chapters in, and I'm like, you are not doing what you set out to do. And there's no sex. The language is really mild. You've got too much social commentary. You've got too much humor. Not enough violence. And on and on. I was like, you missed it. You just told. How could you be 3 chapters in and you didn't hit anything? And I remember thinking, but I'm having such a good time. Oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun writing this. And I was just like, so I'll write it, and a dozen people will read it, and we'll call it a day. And it took off anyway, in spite of myself. I managed to write something somebody wanted to read.
Did it take off pretty quickly?
Yeah, right away. My hope was that, I had the first 4 books in mind and kind of mapped out somewhat. I'm a pantser, so by mapped I mean, thought about. And my hope was that the first 4 books together would generate enough income for me to quit freelancing. And actually, Low Tide did that on its own in the first month. And that was bewildering. And then I released them in very quick succession. I released Riptide, the second book, a little less than a month after I released Low Tide. And the the jump in sales was staggering. And I know that you and I both are very familiar with Wayne Stinnett from K-Boards, and
yeah, he was a guest on one of the previous podcasts too.
He's become a very good friend, and we had become friends while I was writing the series. In fact, he encouraged me to set it in my home state, and I'm grateful that he did. But he kept giving me these predictions with each book, and he kept saying, you're gonna hit this amount of sales, and you're gonna have, this is gonna be your ranking when you release this one, and and I kept saying, you are on too many drugs. And but actually each book surpassed his predictions, and we had a lot of fun watching that happen. But he was very very helpful to me, and in fact, the first sales that I got on Low Tide were his readers. He had mentioned the book in one of his newsletters to his readers, and I think I got 53 sales from his newsletter, and I thought that was the most exciting thing since Keanu Reeves had been born, and I thought those would be the only 53 readers I'd ever have, but I was really excited that I had those 53. but it went nuts after that. It went completely bonkers.
Yeah, and I noticed you and Wayne and Ernest Hemingway dominate the sea stories. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, yeah. Ernie's still doing well.
Yeah. Not too bad, that guy.
Yeah, I make up lots of little jokes about Hemingway in my head when whenever I have a new release or something. I'm like, geez, I wish this guy Hemingway would get out.
Yeah. He's wrecking my cleaning up on the categories there.
Yeah. I'm never gonna hit number one if Ernest Hemingway keeps writing books.
And so now, when you get your ideas, because you said it's like a very small town, but there's like stuff is going on. Do you get your ideas from news stories and you set them in this location, or how does that go about?
A little bit, but I think that I kind of have a tendency to take South Florida's problems and bring them up north. Meth, for instance, is a big problem all over Florida, just like everywhere else. But and it's something of a concern in Franklin County, but it's not as big a concern as you have where I'm from, which is South Florida. So I just kind of exaggerate everything. So I do look at what's going on as far as law enforcement and as far as crime in Florida, and I have gotten a couple of ideas from that. But mainly something just pops into my head, a little tiny piece of a plot, and I have to kind of build a story around it. I wouldn't say that I'd go too much into current events. I do have a book planned, book number 9, that deals with bullying and social media. So sometimes it is stuff that's going on that really catches my interest or is a soft spot for me. Like I said, I have maybe a little bit too much social commentary in these books, and so sometimes I just build a story around something that I care about. But so far, no ripped from the headlines kind of stuff. But it can be inspiring to, that's such a poor choice of words, but it can generate some good thought and ideas to read the news every now and then. But I try to avoid it.
Do you have a writing schedule? Do you write every day, or do you have a goal count that you try to hit?
That sounds awesome.
That's the plan, right?
I have a plan. Yeah, I have a plan. But I also have 3 kids at home, and so yeah, I have a plan. The plan looks
and then it goes out the window.
Yeah, I have yet to. Actually, since the first 4 books, and I don't really know how I did the first 4 books. I wrote the first 4 books in 3 months.
Wow.
And I don't recommend it as a strategy. I did it for very specific reasons, and those reasons were valid, but it just about did me in. But since that time, I have not followed a schedule. Ideally, I would like to be able to just sit down and do 2,000 or 3,000 words a day, 5 days a week, and shut my office door and put it all behind me by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But I write better at night, and so writing while my kids are at school doesn't usually work out for me. What I call writing time is usually staring at screen time. And then, I'm just not very consistent. I'm going to try to be better at that. That's a really high priority for me. I wish I was one of those writers that said, yes, I write from such and such time to such and such time. I write X number of words a day. Because then my publication schedule wouldn't be so screwed up. And I would probably have a much better life balance. But that's something that I struggle with on a daily basis.
Do you feel like a little more pressure now because your books are so popular? You have so many fans wanting the next book. Now, is that something that has changed, or no? Or...
Not as much pressure to succeed as I had with the first 4 books. I was really, I had cut way back on my freelancing so that I could write the series. So we were really struggling financially. And so it was really important to me. I felt a lot of pressure to get them done, get them out there on the schedule that I had set, and for them to be successful. Otherwise, we were in the poorhouse for no reason. And as a single parent, that weighed really heavily on me. So there's less pressure now. I don't have the financial pressure now, although, if you just never write another thing, eventually there's going to be some financial pressure.
Yeah.
But that whole thing, and I know you've heard it many times on K-boards, you've got to release every other month or every 3 months. And I'm sure that's definitely a good thing, but I found it to be untrue. You don't necessarily have to release that fast. I only released 2 books last year, and I've released 1 book this year in June. And this one, number 7, will be out this month. So obviously, they've been more spaced out than the common advice would suggest you should do it. But it's just been really important to me to have a life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that my kids have a life. Otherwise, there's not really much purpose in me being successful. So there is less pressure financially and practically, but there's a lot more pressure to keep up the quality because these readers are so amazing and they are so involved, and they've been so encouraging and supportive and patient. So I want each book. I fret over whether each book is good enough for them, and so yeah, I do put a little bit more pressure on myself creatively. Kind of balanced the scales, maybe less financial pressure, more creative pressure.
It's also fascinating because you get to a point where you're seeing somebody with your success, and I thought this is with other guests that I've had on. Like, no matter how successful you get and how much your readers love your books, you still kind of doubt yourself when you're writing the next one.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because
every book sucks. Every book sucks. They're going to hate this one. I waited too long to release. They've all forgotten the series. They're not going to remember how much they like it, so they're not going to buy it. Every release is going to be a failure. Yeah, and Wayne Stinnett and I have talked about that a few times, and he feels the same way. And he's been doing it 2 years longer than I have, I think, or a year. I think he was about a year and a half in when we met. And he still worries that it's going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it keeps it going. It keeps the drive going and the quality and the writing quality
going.
That
drive going, but I think if I ever lose my gratitude for the success of this series, then it's going to go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
It really will. And then the books will be crap. And I just don't want that to happen. So, plus it's so much less fun if you don't remember how grateful you need to be.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to respect the readers and your fans. Yeah, it's been I just took a quick peek, and of your 7 books, you have hundreds of reviews, and they're all like 4.6 average rating, which is amazing. So that's just awesome.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I just look at the few bad reviews, and there really aren't many, surprisingly. But of course, I remember all of the bad ones.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that. Yeah, you do take it personally. I take every single one personally. And writing is a very personal profession. It's kind of like, every time you release a book, it's like putting your kids on public display and inviting people to criticize them.
Yeah.
Any parent knows that doesn't go over well. So yeah, there have been a few reviews that were really harsh and hurtful, but by and large, I have escaped the 1-star brigade to a certain extent. You want honest reviews. You can learn a lot from the reviews, even whether they're middle of the road or really bad. If you start to see a pattern, then you change what you're doing. But yeah, they could really floor me. Really floor me. I have tried a few times to say, you know what, we're just not going to read reviews anymore, because the bad ones do hurt and they do make me question what I'm doing, and and that's not very productive. But at the same time, the good reviews, sometimes, when you're having a really hard writing day, or you're having a really hard life day, and somebody writes something so heartfelt and sincere and encouraging, it can really make your whole week.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was a way to read them and not see the bad reviews, but I haven't figured that one out yet.
Well, what I did is I kind of stopped reading them, but I know that you can learn from them. So when I have a new book, I had my editor, I said, make sure you read all my bad reviews and see if you can pick any nuggets from that. That way I don't have to do it.
Yeah, I really need to do that. And my oldest daughter handles a lot of administrative stuff for me. And I really should have her do that. But basically, all she would do is call me up and rant.
Yeah, not your daughter. She'll get more mad.
So it really doesn't save me any heartache at all.
Yeah. Well, you look at your buddy Ernie Hemingway. That's like a couple years ago.
Yeah, he doesn't care about bad reviews at all.
Right. A couple years ago, I looked. It's actually at his books, and he has a whole bunch of 1 stars, and it was kind of funny to read those. I'm like, wow. So. You really can't please everybody. That's all you got to do, and just keep on trucking along.
It was sometime last year. I was looking for one Dave Robichaux book from James Lee Burke that I didn't have, and so I was on Amazon and I found the book, and I saw that he had some 1-star reviews, and I was like, well, what maniac left a 1-star for James Lee Burke? And so I was reading his bad reviews, and I was getting really indignant on his behalf. And then I thought, why do you let the bad reviews that you get hit you so hard? You think James Lee Burke is, the pinnacle. So if he can get them, you can get them. Don't worry about it so much. But, it's one thing to tell yourself that intellectually, and it's another thing to convince yourself that, to feel that way.
In your characters, do you find, does your personality find its way into your books, into your characters at all?
Well, my sense of humor definitely does. My editor actually told me one time last year, I don't remember what we were talking about, and she said, you're Wyatt. And I was like, what? And she's like, Wyatt is you. That's you. And, Wyatt's a 6'4" guy in his 40s. And I was like, well, thanks. That makes me feel more feminine. But yeah, he does have my sense of humor, and so I can see where she made that comparison. I think probably to some extent most of the characters have a little bit of me in there somewhere, but probably not much, because I like them an awful lot. So, and I find them a lot more interesting than I am. So I would say probably not very much. But Maggie is actually the first female character I've ever written that I liked. I analyze that every now and then when I'm trying to avoid writing, and I haven't really figured it out. I think I just respect her because she's a really good mom, and she loves her kids. But I have trouble writing female characters. I never like them, ever. And so I've been kind of pleasantly surprised that I actually like Maggie.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I've had a couple guests who are male authors whose protagonists are female, like detectives or whatever, and I was wondering how that went on that side, and it's interesting that it's the reverse is the same thing. You find challenge writing for a female character versus a male.
Yeah, to me, my female characters always seem to come out really simpy and wimpy, and sometimes even downright whiny. All things that I really don't like in females. But I fall in love with every single male character I write. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe male writers write women that they love, and women writers do the same thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Even though all of my male characters are very different, I fall in love with every single one of them. So I'm probably writing a composite of my ideal male or something.
Yeah. What about the bad guys? The how did
Oh, well, him especially.
Of course, always the bad boys get all the attention.
Yeah, well, I have one recurring character, Bennett Boudreaux, who is he's a very central character, and I guess by definition, is a bad guy. I mean, he is a criminal, and he does occasionally kill people, but he's the most interesting male character, and I thought I was a little whacked because I thought he was really pretty hot, actually. But I get a lot of women readers that they really like Boudreaux. Yeah, I guess maybe we all kind of have a thing for the bad guy. He's not black and white bad. Mm-hmm. He definitely lives in the gray margins. But the bad guys that are in each case, whatever case is going on in each book, by and large, they're pretty despicable, and I don't like them, and I have to work pretty hard at not having them all end up dead. I had to remind myself with my last book, Awash, I got about 3/4 of the way through and realized I didn't know exactly how it was going to end for the bad guy. And I was like, you can't kill them all, because heretofore they'd all ended up dead. And I was like, you really can't kill them all. Somebody's going to have to get arrested. And so I actually had a bad guy survive for the first time in 6 books.
I noticed on your website you had the soundtrack for the Forgotten Coast, which
oh yeah,
that is so cool. It kind of reminds me of that Buckwheat Zydeco type music. Is that so? Music play a big part on your stories?
Music is really important to me when I'm writing. I started out writing screenplays, and I always had a playlist. And of course, back then this was the dark ages, and I was writing on an IBM Selectric. So there was no Spotify or iTunes or anything. I just had cassette tapes that I had strung together several different songs. But I always listened to music when I was writing. And I do it now with novels. God loves Spotify. I have a soundtrack for the series. I had a soundtrack for CU. I am starting a second series, a spin-off series, and it has its own soundtrack that's completely different. But yeah, the music is really important to the writing. And sometimes it's just the feel. It's seldom the lyrics. It's just the feel of the music is right. And with this series, it's a lot of Zydeco music, a lot of Cajun blues. It adds so much to the writing process for me. And the readers seem to enjoy it. I have a lot of readers that go on Spotify and they'll listen to the soundtrack of the series. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, then it's also on your website, DawnLeeMcKenna.com. You have it's on there too. If listeners want to go listen to it. It's pretty cool. I love that type of music.
Oh, it's great music. Yeah, it's great music.
So what are you working on now? What's your current project?
Well, I am struggling to get number 7 released. It's called Apparent Wind. It's way behind schedule. My mother had a recurrence of cancer, and I've been dealing with some autoimmune issues, and just a lot of stuff's been going on. And I had planned originally on having this released in July, and my readers are probably kind of sick of me saying, okay, so I've changed the date too, but it'll be out sometime this month. And at the same time, only because I'm so behind on Apparent Wind, I've already started the first book of the second series, and so I kind of overwhelmed myself at this point. But I am excited about the second series. It's the central character is a minor character from the first series, and he's also in law enforcement. And that one is set in Port St. Joe, which is about half an hour from Appalach. The two towns have some similarities, but they're also very different. But it should be a lot of fun. And I'm actually co-writing that series with another friend from K-Boards. And he's really an exceptional writer. His name is Axel Blackwell. We're learning how to co-write.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. How does that work?
Yeah, neither one of us has ever done it before. But he's a brilliant writer, and we both have the same really dry sense of humor. He has strengths that I only aspire to, and so it's nice. We fit together well. I feel badly for him because I've been a terrible writing partner thus far, mainly schedule wise, because it's been really hard to get moving on this, and so that's kind of more pressure for me too. I'm feeling a lot of guilt, a lot of pressure to get that going. But it should be really exciting. Axel is actually, I have a minor character in my series who's named Axel Blackwell, who is based on Axel, or I should say based on his sense of humor. I haven't actually told my readers yet that the second series is a co-writing thing, or that Axel is my co-writer. But I just thought it would be kind of fun to actually co-write with a character from my series.
Yeah, they'll be confused. Like, he's came to life.
Yeah, well, the book that I'm finishing up now, Apparent Win, Axel is actually the central focus of that story. And so I'm hoping that'll kind of dovetail well. He'll be the main character in this book from my first series, and then the next book that I have out is co-written by him. So,
well, that is a cool name, because I'm always, as we're always looking for cool names for characters. And the minute you said that name, I was like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, Axel Blackwell is, I think it's like the best name ever. I wish I had thought of it. But it's what a great name.
Yeah.
And he's a really cool character. He's actually my favorite minor character from the series. He's a really funny guy. Really funny guy. And I think he adds a lot to the series when he pops in.
All right, so I'm not going to keep you take too much more of your time here, Dawn. Is there anything else that you like to say to the listeners? I know we have a lot of aspiring writers that listen to the show.
I don't know if I could say anything to aspiring writers. It would just be to write what you love, write what gets you excited, and try not to worry too much about what people say you should do. I'm sure that the majority of the time, the advice is true and good, and it's not bad advice. But every now and then, somebody can do it the way that they feel is best, despite the best advice, and it can work out. Write what you love, and if your manuscript is getting you excited, then maybe it's going to get readers excited too, even if it doesn't seem to fit or doesn't seem to kowtow to the conventions. And I'm sure going completely ape with genre expectations and whatever isn't necessarily a good idea. But if you think the work is good, and if you're having fun writing it, then there's a decent chance people are going to have fun reading it. If you become successful writing something that you don't necessarily like, but you think that it's a good idea for the market, what's going to happen if it does take off? Then you're stuck writing something that you don't even like. You might as well work at Walmart if you're going to do that.
Yeah, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I love this series. I really do. It's not what I set out to write. I did not set out to be a suspense writer. But man, I have so much fun with it, and I love the world that it's in, and I love the characters that populate it. So I'm very, very fortunate that I can sit down and write something that makes me happy, and people are willing to let me make a living doing that. Especially after 5 years of freelancing and writing what I was told to write. And some of that was pretty heartbreakingly uninteresting. I don't ever want to get stuck writing stuff that I don't get joy from, because I might as well be back writing stuff that doesn't interest me at all as a ghostwriter. Not very articulately put, but yeah, write what you love and write what gives you a sense of excitement when you turn on your computer.
Yeah, no, I think that
Don't give up.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense, because even if it's a popular genre, there's still a lot of room there to do something that you love, like you did. It's a suspense thriller genre, but it's very different, and you found your way.
Yeah, but like I said, I kind of groped my way through there. But there is room for originality, and there is room to blend things from different genres together. And so I think that it's important to stay true to the story and true to yourself as a writer. Keep the market in mind, but don't make it the number one priority. That shouldn't be the end all of your standards for what you're writing.
Okay, Dawn, thank you so much for being on the show. That's a great advice, and I really appreciate being on here, and it was nice talking to you.
Well, thank you, Alan. I really appreciate it, and it was very good to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. I'd like to ask you to please review and rate this podcast over on iTunes. It really helps me get the word out. If you take a few seconds of your time to do that, it would be much appreciated. You can also visit my website at thrillingreads.com/podcast for show notes on this episode, as well as information about the podcast in general. And you can also sign up for my mailing list there. You'll be getting special offers from our guests, as well as information, behind the scenes information on the podcast. And please do visit my author website at alanpeterson.com. I appreciate your support. And so until next episode, I will talk to you then.